Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Inspired Action Life podcast. I'm your host, Karen Baldridge, and I've stepped away from the mic for a few weeks, but I'm back with a good one because today I am bringing in somebody a little bit from my past a few years ago that she and I met at a women's business mastermind, and she just kind of grabbed my attention. It was a decent sized group, but what she was doing was really kind of inspirational to me, and I followed along on Instagram and kind of seen what she's been up to. And she's been making big moves. And so I'm like, we got to talk to her. We got to bring her on and get the story so that some of you can be inspired by what she's doing, any challenges she's overcome. And let's just get the scoop because that's what we do here and see what we can glean from it today. So this is Amy Lemire, and she is president of Amy Training and Consulting. And I'll let her get into that a little bit, but it's for high performing leaders and somewhat in the sales area, but we're going to let her kind of expound on that because I know she and I are similar in that we understand mindset has everything to do with your success and your elevation. And I just can't wait. Like, I'm super stoked to get into this. And so without further ado, I'm going to let Amy take the mic and let's just let her tell her story. So good morning, Amy. How are you?
Hey, Karen, good morning. I'm doing great. I'm so excited to be here with you.
It's been a minute since I've seen you, but I feel like it hasn't been that long because I've been following along. Like you know how like in Instagram things show not everybody who you follow shows up in your feed, right? And
Right.
I still have yet to master that whole that whatever. It's always changing. I don't understand it, but lucky for me, you're always in my feed. So I'm like, I'm bringing you in if you're up for it, and you were. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So tell me, Amy, what you're doing now, and then we're going to throw it back a little bit to see how you got there, because I think that's an important, that climb story gets me every time. So, what are you doing now? Then we'll go back.
Okay, great, Karen. Yes. So what I'm doing now is my business, AIM Training and Consulting. We focus on the fact that success is 90% mindset habits and it's 10% tactics. So really the key focus when I'm introducing myself to people and they're asking me, what do I do? Well, I'll just make it very simple. I am a sales trainer, I'm a speaker, and I'm a habit coach. So what that really means is I work with high performing leaders who want to sell more with confidence so that they can monetize their magic with momentum. And I have been doing this now for 2 years. I actually started the company, quick story, back in 2014 when I wrote my book From Zero to Sales Hero. But it wasn't until 2 years ago that I started working the business full time, because before that I was working in-house. I was in sales in the past, and then for 10 years I was a corporate sales trainer.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's definitely happening and happening fast.
Yeah, that's a jump too that I think a lot of people who ever tune into this can relate to that. Like they're either maybe still in corporate and haven't made that leap, but maybe we're dreaming about it and what was the catalyst to make you go. So I mean, some ears are going to be perking up right now because there's a lot of safety in corporate, but there's also a ceiling, that maybe some of us just kind of want to, whatever, maneuver
Right.
around the ceiling and see what else there is, right? So with that, like how, let's just bring it back a little bit. So because my thing is called Success Leaves Clues, I want to know, how did you get into that whole field, and what was it growing up that you knew this was just going to be a smooth path for you, at least somewhat smooth, but
Right, right. It's a great question. Well, it's funny, when I was a little girl, my dream was to either be an airline stewardess or a rock star.
Oh,
Okay, so it's
hey,
kind of
I
funny
mean,
because
achievable, both.
is I is that with training and speaking and everything I do, there's a lot of travel involved, and then you're in front of people, so it's almost like being on a stage. But it's
Hmm.
you know I really, it's interesting when you said success leaves clues, because I've also heard that quote. I've heard Tony Robbins say that quote
Yep.
before, and it was actually a Tony Robbins event that I went to in about 2008 called Unleash the Power Within.
Mhm.
And at that event, I really began to see a vision for myself getting out of being in frontline sales. I was in medical sales at the time, and it was great. I was making a great living, but I knew there was something else for me. And I went on to do more of his workshops and seminars. And from all of that, I really began to strengthen my self-confidence. And I also began to see that I had a vision to teach and train and support other people. So a couple of years later, in about 2013, is when I moved into being a full-time in-house sales trainer at a company. But the story before that, the really interesting story is that that I don't share, but I've been sharing more often, is that I'm also a survivor. So when I was 9 years old, I was in a car accident. I was almost killed by a drunk driver, and I think that event lit a fire in me for determination, being courageous, and it really led me down a path of finding self-development. My grandmother gave me a book called Determination, the Story of Helen Keller when I was 9. And reading that book, I learned at that young age that you can be courageous, you can be determined, you can create a life you want, you can overcome challenges and fear. But throughout my life, I began to go to self-development workshops, seminars. I read books. I started going to seminars when I was about 19 in college.
Oh
So
my,
my whole life has really been about courageousness, determination, and really personal, professional development and human potential. So I know my mission is truly to uplift humanity. And the pathway I've done that is through self-development, sales, coaching, and training. So that's a long answer to your question.
I mean, that's a lot to unpack right there because that changes the game, because
Right.
I understand for mindset, you get that there are different events that take place in our life that we're kind of almost there sometimes either for our downfall or for our growth. And what is freaking fascinating to me is that at the young age of 9 years old, you've already got this influence, like your grandma's like an angel coming in and like showing you, shining the light on the pathway forward. Because some don't have that. They might take a completely separate mindset of, oh my gosh, this happened to me, and how will I ever overcome it and get over it? And at 9 years old, you had so much resilience and understanding, such wisdom as a 9-year-old to understand that, wait a minute, this didn't happen to me. It happened maybe for me. You
Right.
begin to investigate it. That is freaking fascinating. Okay. And the fact, one more thing before I let you go, is that what resonates with me is that you picked up personal development at that age, because some of us nutty teenagers, what personal development, what, we didn't even know what the heck that was. It's like we had our religion or our churches or whatever we were learning, within our lifetime at an organization like that. But self-development, that is crazy. You were certainly chosen, weren't you? That is interesting. Like, that wasn't by accident that your soul
Absolutely.
was introduced to this whole new path. All right, go on. So you started, so I can't wait to hear this. So I'm going to keep interrupting you because I love it. Okay. All right. So 19 years old, you really kind of were diving deep into this, and this sort of chose maybe the pathway that you were now heading, correct?
Yes, yes. So the light that I saw when I started really doing a lot more of the self-development later in my life was that I really had a true desire to teach and train other people. And so after doing that, working for some big medical companies for 10 years, I really loved the work I was doing, but I also began to go to other workshops to study how to run my own business. So I went to, there's a group called the Women's Business Development Center in Chicago, where I lived for 14 years. And I really just began to understand what are the foundations of setting up a business. And I started my business initially just as a side hustle. I would do some coaching on the side. And what really happened though was during the pandemic, when the whole world was shut down, I was in a sales training position. I was so unhappy. I was so burned out. I was so not aligned with the values and some of the ethics of the organization I was working with, that I decided to start doing coaching on the side on the evenings and weekends. And I started coaching groups. To this day, I've done about 19 coaching groups, and I originally just thought, okay, maybe I could do this for fun and see what happens. I
Yeah.
had recently gotten divorced, and I used that money to pay off my divorce, and then it began to build more and more momentum. And I thought to myself, I want to do this full time. And so what I did is I also got a coach, but I set a date that by November of that year, 2021, I was going to quit my job.
Mm.
And it was really scary.
Uh-huh.
But the other thing that happened is a company I was working for asked if I would do consulting work for them. And so that helped me during that first,
Wow. It's
year,
like
year and a half while I was
that
really getting momentum
safety
in
net
other areas.
appeared, which makes that takes the edge off a little bit, knowing that there's at least all of that. I mean, it's like, again, pause on that, because I feel like in 2020 that gave an opportunity that unlike anything else that
Right.
the world has ever seen. I met you shortly after the whole pandemic kind of first rotation went around, and like in the 2021, and I remember you dropping that pin in the fall, like, I'm quitting in the fall, and by God, if you did not do it, I mean, you just completely stuck to what it almost helps. It's like you have to mentally marry that date, like that is the cutoff. It's do or die. You have to really internalize that, right? I mean, when you say that is making it too nebulous means you'll never do it, but dropping the pin on it, like right here, this is where it ends, all of it. Tell me, when you were doing those sales trainings as a side hustle, and this is what might pop up in other people's heads, was it sales training, or was it mindset, or was it a combo, or how did you get these people? What did that look like? How did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so the coaching groups that I started first, it was I got a lot of my first clients by going to networking events, even ones that were on Zoom during the pandemic. And then I also got a lot of my clients and my groups through companies, the company I was doing the sales training for. And what the training that I do, that actually, and I do have a course coming up on January 15th, but it's called The Best Version of You: Success Habits Breakthrough. And
I
it's a
love it.
10-week course in which we focus on 6 habits that will either make or break your success. So I always say that our thoughts support our success, they
Yeah.
support us, or they sabotage us. And so what I do is I give people an assessment that's free. And when they take the assessment, I can go through the results with them, and I can quickly identify what patterns somebody is running in their life that are helping them succeed and which ones are pulling them backwards. And then we work together over 10 weeks to, of course, strengthen the habits that are already strong, but the ones that
Yeah.
aren't supporting them, we really realign them back to success.
I love this. Is this an online course that you're offering, or is it in person, or what is it?
Great question. So it is virtual because I know there's so many people throughout the United States, and I have had, I
Right.
think the furthest person I've had join me was from Dubai,
Oh my
but I
God.
do it in the evening
Uh-huh.
because there are a lot of people that are in my audience that are some of them are in sales, and I know, working during the daytime, it's sometimes hard to break away. So I do them on Monday nights at 7 p.m. for 1 hour. And that way, people can do their work, have their dinner, jump online, and that's Central Time Zone, by the way.
Oh,
And
okay. Good to know.
then I do record the calls, so if somebody can't be there, nobody misses anything.
Oh my gosh. I mean, and again, that could set it up for like what you were doing. We start out with a side hustle, we get our legs underneath us, we get our confidence built up. Because, and another theme that I'm seeing with you that, again, I think a lot of people can resonate with, and I can as well, is getting in the room with other people, like in the groups with other people who are doing the things that either you want to do, but maybe you're a few steps behind them, or they're in that same level with you. There's just safety in numbers. What I realized when you and I first met, and Michelle's group, is I was just getting started, and there were people that were well ahead and established. But there was just something about the belief in that group that made me believe that it is possible. Because when you step outside that container, it doesn't look the same. So, I mean, I think that you would agree, and I think you're cultivating communities as well, correct? Because you understand the value of that community, because things seem real, things seem doable and believable when you're with other like-minded people. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, right. And that's where it might not be for everybody, and that's okay. And I really, when I'm talking to people about joining this group, I'm very selective in the fact that I'm looking for energy rich people. I'm looking for people who want to invest in this and being the best version of themselves. But of course, people do have challenges that they're coming to work on. But the biggest advice I would give anyone that's looking to do this course, or any course for that matter, is you've got to trust the process. And also, the best investment you'll ever make is in yourself. I
Yeah.
live and breathe by those two phrases.
Well, you're the walking billboard of it, because again, you've been doing this knowing to do it. That's the thing. I'm giving you like the hugest applause. You understood the return on investment by doing this, because most of us would intellectualize the money, right? Like, I'm only making this much. How am I going to come up with whatever thousands of dollars for this course? Never understanding to treat it like an investment, like you would in the stock market, or like you're buying real estate, and understanding that the return on that investment might be far larger than any kind of yield you would get from your stocks or your 401k, or the percentage that might come back to you. And people don't look at it that way. So I love how you had a fundamental understanding of that, that there is so much, but it probably had to do with what was inside of you, understanding, somehow knowing this is your course in life. You knew it, even though maybe you couldn't
Right.
put words to it. There's something in you like, I'm going to bet on myself, right?
Absolutely.
So how did it start out once you made that thing on November 2021? You dropped the pin. What'd you do next? Like, what was your next move? What'd you do?
Yeah, the next move was, once I made that decision to leave and to go out on my own. So the biggest thing is I set goals, but I also did something I did when I was in sales. I set key performance indicators. So I had a goal each week of how many people I was going to talk to, how many appointments I was going to get, what was my monthly income going to look like, how many, blog posts on my social media am I doing? But to this day, I have a weekly recurring KPI
Mhm.
sheet that I do, and I'm always watching what my performance is. So when I went on my own, I really honestly, I continued doing what I've been doing before I quit the job. I did the coaching group still,
Mhm.
and I did the corporate sales training consulting. I started doing more speaking. But
Mhm.
another thing I did that is a little bit different is I began to create a weekend retreat experience. So I took my virtual program. So
Mhm.
today I do two virtual programs a year. I do one in January and one in June. That's the 10-week, online. But
Yep.
then during the pandemic, we couldn't meet in person because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
So what I do now also is I offer a retreat, which is the same weekend. It's the same information weekend experience. I have one in April, July, and November, and I already have the date set for next year. And at the end of that experience, if people are like, I loved it, I want a lot more, I want to stay in this tribe, then they can join my 1-year Inner Circle Accelerator program. So I started building all of that when I quit the job. It was really hard to create that and focus on that and concentrate on that when I was working full time. But once I went on my own, that was the next big step and stage for me to go to. So I've been doing that piece now I just had my 1-year anniversary in November.
Oh my
I've
gosh.
done
Well,
4
I have
retreats now.
seen those retreats, and like you've put like little clips and bits on your Instagram, and I have seen that, and I love it, because again, that was our mutual thing that we met when we were in our the group together that you and I were, with Michelle, about how to build that community around these events, retreats, and how to just have that container, right? How, because there's just something more powerful about that container. And I think a question, and I'm just asking questions that I know many would ask, because I might ask that same thing as I'm
Right.
listening. How do you source your people to get into your groups? Because if you're doing consulting, you can't grab those people because they're already in corporate. How do you get those individuals who have a little more passion to like up level their life or their career in some way, but it's an individual pursuit? It has nothing to do with their team. How do you source them?
Great question. Yeah, so I get most of my clients through speaking, and also on the sales training side of my business, there's usually 2 or 3 people that connect with me after the training is over and just say, wow, I really liked, what you said. And then they take my assessment online, and then we have a conversation, and then they decide there's something I really want to work on in my life.
Yeah.
Probably the number one thing I think that most people want to improve is their self-confidence. And I think that is a number one key ingredient to be great in sales. If you don't have self-confidence, it's going to be really hard to present yourself, to ask people to spend money, to ask for commitments, handle rejection. I mean, the list goes on and on. So I also get my contacts from networking, and a lot of them I just get through my personal network of having, been in the corporate America world for, 30 years. There's oftentimes people that I reconnect with that way, but it's definitely a different, sources. I do webinars also, so they come from different places.
I mean, I think that is the hardest thing. First of all, sales in general, you got to be special, girl. Like, to be doing sales, oh my gosh. Like, that just melts me down. Like, that is my least. It's not that it's my least favorite, because oddly enough, I find it a challenge. So I secretly like it because it's challenging. It feels somewhat strategic, but I don't want it to feel strategic because I want it to feel authentic. So you just must innately know how to marry the two between authenticity and confidence. I mean, I don't know. Is that a learned skill? Can you learn that?
Well, that's a great question. And one of the habits that there's 6 habits I focus on in my course. One of them, I think the most important one in sales, is called the habit of connecting with people. And one of the parts of my program is I also utilize the principles from Og Mandino, who wrote the book, The Greatest Salesman in the World.
Yes.
So what I really focus on when it comes to sales is one of the biggest mistakes we make in sales is we're focused on ourselves versus the other person. And we really want to be of a place of being of service, understanding their challenges, understanding their needs, really getting a clear understanding of what problems they're having. Because if I don't have that discovery, or I don't know what their problems and challenges are, they're not going to pull their wallet out just because it's a nice idea, right? It's got to be something that they innately want to focus on and get better at. So what I do is I help people see what their challenges are. And then what I do is I see a vision for the best version of what they could be. And then what we do is we talk about how we can get you there. So a lot of the questions about sales is really just about having, I think it's almost like having an interview with people. And it's also really about being of service to somebody else. That's probably one of the biggest myths in sales, is that it's all about, being salesy, or people don't like sales.
Exactly. The ick factor of sales.
Everybody loves service. And I think sales is 90% customer service, because if you think about it, the time leading up to them giving you their money or signing a contract, and then the time after that, that is all service. There's only like one point where they're actually making the commitment and signing a contract. And that's a lot of what I talk about in my course also.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, that's going to be a hot one for many people, because of the whole ick factor of sales for those of us who haven't mastered it. I mean, all the hitches from all these groups that you've done. You understand that it can be very squeamish, especially when you're striking out on your own and you're selling like your own knowledge pool, your own self, so to speak, but it's yourself, but the knowledge that you're presenting and providing and whatever. So there's that little disconnect that gets a little squeamish for
of course.
So, I mean, do you feel like most of the time, some of the people that are in your groups end up going the entrepreneurial route because they're kind of inspired by, well, maybe I can do this? I mean, do you look to do that, or like what is your outcome? What makes you know that, okay, this went well? I feel like it was a success. How do you measure that?
That's a great question. So part of it too is so the habit finder assessment, and that's the assessment I've been referencing too, but people take it at the beginning of my course, and then they take it at the end of the course. And that's when we can really look together and see how their thought habits have shifted, because they're going to get a numeric value in their people skills, their work skills, their self-discipline skills, their confidence, their life fulfillment, and their goal setting. So it's those 6 areas.
Oh.
And when we look at their scores at the end, we can see their thought habits have shifted. But then between each session, we also have, I call it bonus work. There may be some reading. You may practice some of the principles in your real life. There's things you do between each session where you're going to practice and apply what you're learning to your life and your goals, of course, if that makes sense.
That's very good, because again, it doesn't always have to be directly sales related. It's developing a part of you that has those barriers to doing any kind of sales or to presenting your special sauce, your special magic. I mean, because if you don't know how to present it, then no one's ever going to know about it. So you're there
Absolutely.
to make that connection for people. And I love that, because that's a perfect niche, and you've got the pedigree to do so. And people need that, because again, Joe Schmo online isn't necessarily, they're going to have to sell their pedigree. They're going to have to sell their background, their experience. Like, well, how will you be, qualified to show me how to jump out of the current version of me and jump into this new alternate version that is coming to be,
Right.
so to
Absolutely.
speak. Can you tell me what are some of your, and we're going to, wrap this up and get it to the present time, but could you tell me what some of your favorite inspirational either books or speakers or quotes or anything that's kind of a driver for you? I mean, we know that you've gone to Tony Robbins, so he must be a big one. Are there any of your favorite books that have just like had the light bulb moment for you or anything like that?
Definitely. I think, of course, yeah, Tony Robbins would probably be the top of my list. And I'm a Tony Robbins senior leader, so I've gotten to work his events. So I have not, there's a few people I'm going to mention, but he's probably the top of my list for somebody who's had a personal influence on my life and my success. But his book, Awaken the Giant Within, my mom gave me a copy of that when I was a teenager. It is a great book to read. I'm also a Bob Proctor fan.
Yes.
Bob Proctor
Mhm.
is he's most of what I've with him, it's been mostly watching his content on YouTube, and
Mhm.
before he passed away, I did a lot of his virtual events. The
Oh,
other person that I'm, of course, Og Mandino, because
yeah.
the group I'm certified through is called the Og Mandino Leadership Group.
Oh,
So
okay.
he's amazing. And he also is very inspirational, but also his principles are the foundation of what I teach.
Okay.
And I think those are probably Jack Canfield, The Success Principles is a really great book to read also. But the Og Mandino book is The Greatest Salesman in the World is one that I would recommend.
Oh,
Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich is probably another one of my favorites.
that's on like repeat for me. Think and Grow Rich. And you know what's interesting, Amy, in closing, is that you've spoken to a lot of groups, probably a lot of corporate groups, and I've spoken to a few. And what's interesting, every now and then I'll get a little squirrely with my presentation and go off the reservation, and I'll ask, so, have any of you heard of different concepts that are like self-development based, or some interesting books that might be not typical reading for corporate, speaking, events and things like this? And Think and Grow Rich is one I have routinely thrown out there.
Yeah.
Crickets. Nobody. And I'm like, huh, that's interesting. So
Right.
I find that to be very interesting. So I think it's safe to say that there's a huge pool for you to have some impact on. And I always feel encouraged by that, because I take any opportunity I can get to kind of poll some of these people who are otherwise not doing this type of work, would have no idea who Jack Canfield is or Bob Proctor. I of
Right.
course do. And it's just another level, right? I mean, it's like a
Absolutely.
complete different level of seeing life and seeing the world.
Absolutely. Agree 100%.
And I love that your mom is giving you these Tony Robbins books. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. As a teenager, what? That is
Right. Right. It's amazing. I'm very
amazing.
blessed.
It's completely amazing. Okay. I love all of this, top to bottom, everything. You are just different. You are special. You have the secret sauce. You were meant to impact people because it was put in you at a young age. You just knew that this was going to be your path innately, and it's working. And so again, you inspired me from afar these few years. So I'm glad that I finally, hooked you on here so that we could chat today, because it's
Me
amazing.
too.
So let's talk. and end this on where people can find you and about your course, when it starts, how they can get enrolled. Let's tie up our housekeeping things because these are important. So tell us.
Okay, great. Sure. So the best way to find out about my course is to go to my website, and my website is I'm going to say it and then I'll spell it.
Okay.
It's aimtnc.com. So that's AIMT like Tom and C like consulting.com. And up on the right-hand corner, there is a link that says programs, and you click on programs and it would be the first one that comes up on the left. So it's my virtual program. It starts on Monday night, January 15th, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I do have payment plans available, so I will work with anybody and everyone to help them make this possible. And there's also, it's a whole course and a program. So we would also have a one-on-one because I would be shipping you a whole kit. It's me talking, but it's also a lot of following the program that the way it's laid out. And also, I am on LinkedIn. My page, AIM Training and Consulting, is on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn as Amy Lemire, Lemire. I'm also on Facebook and I'm on Instagram.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure that in the show notes, I put all of your handles and all the different ways that people can find you. And I would just encourage that I'll make sure that this episode gets online before that beginning date of your program. So that way, anyone who wants to make that big leap into 2024, here's a big opportunity. It's like you just need that extra push over the edge, or to understand some infrastructure around what your goals are and how you're trying to get there. Amy is well versed to help do that. So I'm excited. I can't wait. I'll make sure this goes online. And it was a pleasure to talk to you and catch up, Amy. I'm so glad we were able to do this. This is great.
Likewise, Karen, it was so great to reconnect with you again. And I'm so grateful that you invited me to be on your show today. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was so great. And I had so much fun.
I had fun, of course. I knew that I would, though. So thank you, and have a happy holiday. And I can't wait to drop this and let 2024 be epic, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Make 2024 our best year yet.
It's going to be. I feel it. I already feel it. It's in. All right, friend. We will be talking later.
Sounds great. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.